And we are now live. Welcome everyone at this month's webinar. So, Joost, I don't have a product placement ticker, so I think that requires fair warning.
I need my soundboard so that I can do the Coca-Cola light break sound. But
nice. Okay, so we have some people joining us. I saw they were queuing already on YouTube, so that's a fun site as always.
Queuing up for SEO. That's the secret. Get in early.
Yeah. Yeah. That's with digital products. You want to camp out there at the front door, you know?
Yep. Midnight launches. The next Just SEO update, we should do a midnight launch.
Oh, absolutely.
I say we, I'm not staying up.
So if you're here, do drop a chat and a comment either on YouTube or Facebook with where you're from. We love hearing and seeing that. And so far we've only got UK people, and that can't be true.
Jonathan from Chester, though, excellent zoo. Good work. Keep it up. Maybe not your zoo, but
it's our friends in the UK who already know that we're going to ask this, so they're just ahead of us.
Yeah. Well, it must be good to be in the UK and be ahead of something.
Ooh,
don't go there, Joost. We're just getting started.
It is lovely and sunny today, and that's enough for me. I will focus one day at a time.
Well, I mean, I can honestly say that you're ahead in vaccinations by quite a bit over the Netherlands, because the way it looks like right now, we'll be getting our vaccines somewhere in July.
Wow.
Yeah, the first one.
Yeah.
If you need to. Yeah, so I see Pakistan, I see Hungary, I
see Orlando, Florida. Yes. I booked my flight to Orlando, Florida for the end of this year, so I'm looking forward to that. To go to my home away from home, and those of you who now know where I'm going. And El Salvador, that's cool. New Jersey.
Very cool.
Sweet. Yeah, also saw Sweden, Stockholm to be exact.
And a Rome guided visit. That is in Italy. I was in Rome just a year and a half ago. I want to travel again. Don't we all want to travel again? We should plug that site that you were talking about, John. Now that we're plugging things anyway.
Yeah, not SEO related, but completely really great recommendation. Virtualtrips.io. It's an online go do guided tours, but virtually. So a local tour guide takes you around the place, and they've got an incredible calendar of all sorts of incredible places. I'm doing the Taj Mahal, the Terracotta Warriors, all sorts over the next week or so. Really, really cool. Go check it out. Good show.
That is pretty awesome. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, just sharing some of the things that you can do while stuck at home during COVID.
Yeah, other than eating all of the cheese, which, like, there's only so much cheese. It's a lot, but there's a limit.
Well, we're Dutch. There's plenty of cheese. Don't worry.
Okay, should we get the show on the road?
Yeah, almost. I still see the counter pop up quickly, which means that people are joining. And see, they're now joining from further away. Bangladesh is joining us. Bali is joining us.
Serbia, all sorts. Very exciting.
Yes. Gainesville, Florida. We actually have a colleague who's local to Gainesville. She's on the support team. So with that, and Serbia in the house, I think that's our cue to really, really, really get started. I think we are good to go. All right, let me get started with a quick introduction of our two speakers for today. Of course, everyone who's joined our webinar before already knows these two famous rock stars of SEO. Yeah, the one where you just saw that little moon on the back of his head is Jono Alderson. He is our digital strategist and whatnot. He knows everything about SEO and he reads the matrix. And the fine gentleman in the with the awesome picture in the background is Joost de Valk. He's wearing his Hawaii shirt today because we have this nice weather in the Netherlands for at least 2 days of summer this year. So you can know Joost as the founder and chief product officer of Joost, a company you've probably heard of if you are listening to this webinar. So with that, have fun, guys, and I'll be back for Q&A at the end.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Taco.
Lovely.
Yes, and I actually can move my slide. So, hey everyone, we're going to talk about news, and we have whole loads of news. Nah, not really. We've got a lot of fun stuff to cover though, so let's go do that. We'll start with the Google news, or as I like to call it internally, the stuff that SEOs fuzzed about. Mobile first indexing. I should have removed this slide. I said to you, I'm not going to talk.
We did a big rehearsal earlier. We went through it all, and this slide.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So mobile first indexing has been rolling out. People are worrying about it, and I don't know why. Because, well, it just means that Google indexes your site as a mobile site. And if your site doesn't look like a good site on a mobile site, then you won't be ranking well. That's the problem you'll have to fix by making your site look well on a mobile site. It's really that simple.
Pretty much it. And a lot of businesses panic and get confused about, well, I've got all this desktop logic and all this mobile logic, and which bit should I hide, and what happens if I use tabs? And the answer to all of it is just make sure that your mobile visitors have a good mobile experience, because that's what Google cares about, because the world is mobile first. So yeah, I don't think it makes sense to get bogged down in the weeds of what is and isn't mobile friendly. Just make it nice, make it better, make it equivalent. We did publish an article about mobile parity, about ways to kind of compare your desktop and mobile, but even that might be getting in the weeds a bit much when, yeah, just make your mobile experience good is pretty much the short and long of it.
Okay, we've talked about this long enough.
Good job.
Okay, so
here's
the biggest news in the SEO space for the last couple of weeks was coming from a dear friend of mine called Rand Fishkin, whom I recently interviewed on the Yoast SEO podcast. Considered as a plug for the Yoast SEO podcast. Rand knows a lot about a lot of things, but he's been out of search for a while, and then every once in a while he comes back and publishes this, which I'm not all that sure about whether it's actually useful to anybody, because we complain as an industry about Google keeping more and more traffic to themselves with featured snippets and all that stuff, as though Google owns us something. As though they owe it to us to give us more traffic or whatever. But it's their traffic and it's their users, and I think it's just weird. What's happening around this? Well, Rand published a study that says almost 65% of searches do not result in a click. Some people were questioning the methodology and the data behind that. I honestly don't really care about the percentage, because yes, it's true. A number of searches do not end in a click. Is this a problem? No, I don't think it is. If you're searching for meta description and you see a featured snippet that explains what a meta description is, as a user, that is a perfect user experience. Why would you need to click to a website to see the actual result? And if you had nothing more to add than just that, then maybe your added value is not that big. At the same time, if you are the one in that featured snippet explaining what a meta description is, that is a very worthwhile brand experience. People will not click to your site, but they will have the positive brand impact of being able to get a result like that. So I'm fine with that myself. But Google's Danny Sullivan felt compelled to, well, dispute it and say, hey, we are actually sending more traffic all the time. Honestly, I think they're doing fine. Is there anything that I didn't say here that we should say, Jono?
Yes, the elephant in the room is copyright, particularly when it comes to the content of publishers, newspapers, writers, etc. Where if I search for something as a user and I get the answer I want directly in the search results, that is a great user experience, but it breaks the commercial and monetization models of some of the types of brands who produce that information. And there's a big question mark around how should that relationship work? Is it even legal? And what are the options? And Google will quite quickly say, you can opt out of this by blocking your site via robots text, which, yes, is correct, but then you get no traffic from Google. So it's not a great compromise. But as you said, we're not really entitled to traffic from Google. And it's never been Google's objective necessarily to send traffic to websites. More specifically, they want to solve user problems. And there is a clear direction of travel here that the world is changing and the business models need to change with that, that we need to be focusing less on how do I gobble up all these clicks and turn them into money, and focusing more on how do I find a way to generate value when people are searching for problems they have in my space. Which is harder, it's more abstract, it's more brand reliant, it's less KPI and click centric, but that's where this is going and that's where we need to be thinking. And the more we fight with this and argue with it, the more we root ourselves in a world where we're kind of addicted to driving these clicks. And it's just not the direction that Google's going in. Legal pressures, etc., might change the direction of some of this, but I don't see that really happening. I think the challenge here is to adapt, not to fight. So we need to be thinking about how we use the search results as a branding platform, not as somewhere to be chasing those clickety clicks. That wasn't brief, was it? That was lots of words.
I fully agree with what you're saying. No, it is very much about well, not being an intermediate, but adding value. And if you do that, then none of this will ever be a problem to you.
Yep.
Okay, so there was another trend that Google talked about, and I sort of missed actually where they did this. Was this in their Think event again, or another thing, or where did they say this?
Where did they say this?
They say that these pandemic changes in their REs are permanent, and well, I agree with them in many ways. Consumer tech consumer. Let me try that sentence again. Consumer habits saw tectonic shifts, is what they said, and that's true. Of course, we've all changed a lot this year. Events have gone virtual. I think that'll definitely stay around, although we'll also have in-person events again. I really do not see myself getting into a plane 20 times a year again anytime soon. It doesn't feel necessary anymore in a way. A lot of people working from home. I think what will happen there is that a lot of companies like ours will become a bit more hybrid. So they will actually switch from being all in the office or all at home to having intermediate stages there. I know that we definitely have. And well, Johnny, you're a good example yourself. You did this pre-COVID already, but you were in the Joost offices normally about a week a month or something like that.
Yep, just enough to go and load up my plate with things to do and catch up with people. I do find there is something really valuable about being in close proximity to people very intensely for a short period of time. Lots of whiteboards, lots of discussions, lots of ideas, and then go away, work at home, process them all, ship the things, and then do it all again. It works really nicely. I can definitely see that becoming a good normal.
Yeah, well, me too. It's funny that Google talks about these things in this way, though. It is, of course, very self-serving in a way as well.
Yes.
They also said online shopping became the norm. Well, I have to agree. I don't know whether that's true for everyone, but it certainly did see a huge lift. Okay.
There was a really interesting, just before we move on, a really interesting statistic in that, which I'm just trying to find, which was something like queries in Google around, here it is, around who has and is it in stock, and questions around stock availability increased by 8,000%, because suddenly people are stocking up on home stuff. They want to check whether products are available before they go out, all sorts of reasons. And this got me thinking, the businesses who've done really, really well as the world has changed around us are those who've adapted to these changing behaviors. It's the restaurants who've pivoted from doing Michelin star service to boxes that get delivered to your door, for example. And I think that's something that's really worth focusing on from an SEO perspective, because a lot of what SEO is demand fulfillment. It's understanding what your audience wants and positioning yourself as a solution to that, which is very much not how a lot of other parts of business work. Like solidly standing by your identity and your brand and your definitions is maybe not the best way when you need to be adapting and changing as the landscape changes. And I think maybe even there's a space and an opportunity for SEO to drive demand. When you start to look at the direction of these changes and how important it is to be adapting to how consumers are behaving, you can try and get ahead of that. You can do keyword research. You can look at what the features Google are launching. You can look at articles like this about the things Google are talking about, and you can start to change your business in ways that puts you in front of those users. So I think that's really important to think about from an SEO perspective. How do you make yourself the right fit for this new world? Not just how do you tweak your content or your site, but your whole business model maybe.
I agree. Yeah. Okay. Techie stuff. Google added some refreshed resources. I actually don't think that they changed all that much, but they did update their video SEO documentation, and that was a good thing because it was honestly a bit of a mess, and it now is looking fairly good. So kudos to them for doing that. Of course, all of these things you don't have to worry about if you use the Yoast Video SEO add-on, because we do all of this for you if you use our plugin. But yeah, it was really good to see them update this, and also to see them up what they think is more important, because I think that they actually switched sitemaps and video object schema markup around.
That's a good direction of travel, isn't it? We definitely like a world where schema is the way that search engines and other systems should read this kind of information. It feels like sitemaps are a little bit old school, still really valuable, still really important, but schema is so much better, faster, sleeker, stronger. So yeah, good to see that.
I recorded a podcast with a certain chap called Phil Nottingham, who is a friend of Jono's and myself. And it's all about video SEO, video marketing. It's coming out tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. Nice. And there's also some new stuff around clips. You may have seen the fancy results where you see the highlighted clip moments in the search results. There's some documentation about how to do that, but you have to be in the beta, and we haven't seen anybody else but YouTube, have we?
No, it's a bit weird. Like, it's such a powerful feature. There's like broken out which bits of the video do you want to get to, which bits solve your specific problems, or those chapters. In theory, the schema for that is open source. It's defined. Anybody can mark up their videos in that way. But yeah, you have to be specially allowed by Google to get those search results. And it looks like YouTube might be the only domain on there. I'm sure there are others, but it does feel like a strange move to have this feature and not allow other people to use it. Maybe it's a test. Maybe we'll see.
Yeah, I hope so. It does look like a very powerful thing that we could definitely have fun with. Okay. Google My Business. Well, I'll let you take this one because it is.
Thanks. This isn't the biggest news in the world, but I think it's a good thing. If you use Google My Business, if you have a local business, chances are you get reviews through Google My Business, and they turn up in the search engines and Google Maps as those little star ratings by your business. Historically, it has been a pain to manage those. If you get a bad review that you want to challenge, whether that's somebody spamming or maybe it was somebody complaining about something you want to have a rebuttal for, that process was really opaque. It was really difficult to understand what was happening with the moving parts. There's now a really nice interface for this. It only works for businesses with a small number of reviews or properties, so it's not great for big business. But if you're a small business really wanting to actively manage your reviews, you can now see them in one place. You can work through them. You can check the status. I would definitely go take a look if you're a local business with a store people can visit and give reviews to. All more tools and more visibility and more data is definitely good here.
Cool. Well, of course, if you don't know what Google My Business is, or you don't know how to use it, we have a local SEO course at Joost that you should really go check out. This is the sponsored segment. So Chrome, or Chromium, but with that Chrome soon too, will switch to HTTPS by default, which actually is quite a change. Yeah, as simple as it is, isn't it?
Yeah, a lot of the web is old and a lot of the web is unmaintained. And especially, I would potentially think a lot of WordPress sites are old and unmaintained. And they are either sat on insecure hosting with insecure setups, or all of their links HTTP, and all of their embedded images are HTTP. And this is a security issue and it's a performance issue. A lot of cutting edge web performance techniques require you to be on HTTPS. There really isn't a good argument anymore for staying on HTTP. The whole web should be on this new standard. I say new, it's older than I am, I'm pretty sure. But if you're on an old site or an insecure site, it's not always easy to upgrade. This is getting easier. Google are pushing harder for it. This is the end of an era. Really nice to see this truly become the norm now. Really good.
Yeah. Yeah, I do also think it's a great step. Okay, and then in some of the weirdest news of this month, we got a couple of these for a couple of sites, and it doesn't seem to have gone out to a huge number of sites, but Google shared a message through Google Search Console about a shared array buffer thingy. And honestly, I still to this day don't understand it. So they sent us a message that we should fix something. Jono and I both got one for WordPress.org because we're Google Search Console admins for WordPress.org. And they tell you that there is a page on your site where you have to do something with a shared array buffer. And I've looked at the landing page that they gave for that. I've looked at the video on the landing page. I consider myself relatively intelligent, and I still don't know what to do. And then they came out with this clarification, and I still don't know what to do. And the worst part is I still don't know which page on WordPress.org this affects either, because they don't tell you anywhere.
Yeah.
So
they send out a lot of these emails and they're not always very clear, but usually you can work it out. It's like, there is a problem with your images. Okay, I can go and I can find out what's going on. But this was just like, I have a reasonable understanding of JavaScript, but trying to get to the bottom of this was a nightmare. So if you've had one of these, maybe you can ignore it. Maybe you can't. Maybe they'll clarify the clarification, hopefully. But yeah, it's something to do with changing standards in how Google Chrome treats different windows and URLs and passing data between them. Hopefully it'll just go away, but we shall see. We'll wait and see what breaks.
Yeah, to be honest, there's no search impact either. So there is an impact in that some of this something might not work entirely anymore in a way, or some tracking might not work, but there's no SEO impact. So don't worry. Yeah, this is interesting, Jono. You pinged me with this.
Yeah, so Google launched this the other day. I don't know whether there's meant to be a picture on that slide. Oh, there we go. Google launched this the other day. I thought it was really interesting for two reasons. One is Google walks a very thin line between being a way to search for and find things and being an affiliate. And especially, I mean, given what we were saying earlier about them disintermediating things and just being the solution, if they're then also recommending and selling you the products, that really does enter a gray area where Google knows better and they're choosing which brands win and lose, and they're making money from both sides. Interesting. So I think it's interesting that they're moving into that space. But also, when they talk about this best things for everything site, which is like recommending the best camera, the best skateboard, the best laptop, they say it's a temporary thing. So really odd strategically, quite a nice resource, an interesting idea that if I want a new camera, just tell me which the best one is, great. But should they be doing this? Is it okay? And why is it temporary? It feels like an odd content move for them. Maybe part of something bigger that's going on. So we'll watch this and see where it goes. But pretty cool. Go take a look.
It does feel like one of those projects that's just gonna fade away.
Another failed Google marketing widget.
Yeah. Yeah, they have a lot of those. Okay, and then they added some new schema that we well, explain to us what this is, because it might even be hard to see for people when they look at my slide now. But
yeah, I think this is really cool. So we see lots of examples where implementing certain types of schema.org markup give you rich results. And there's a whole bunch of those in the Yoast product. Excellent, yada, yada, yada. Some of those do more visual interactive things than others. So recipes give you a calorie count, but FAQs and how-tos give you a big fold out accordion that you can interact with. This is the next level. This is educational questions and challenges and problems, the kinds of things you might see on a school quiz or a test or an exam. And you can mark up your content in a way that says, this is the question, this is multiple choice, this is a formula, this is a time-based problem. You can really get quite specific, especially around mathematical formulas. You can do questions around how do I deal with math problems and relationships between fractions and stuff in a way that's quite hard to otherwise. Why that's interesting is there are a huge amount of searches by students and people trying to learn for these kinds of practice problems. How do I calculate the speed of light? What is viscosity? These types of things. And I wonder, thinking about it, how many of those are zero-click searches that actually this is a great user experience. And this is exactly the kind of content that I want Google to be solving in the search result. It's not the kind of thing that I want to have to navigate to a site full of ads to do. This is wonderful, really interesting. And it's a great example of how much further there is to go with schema and why it's so important. Pretty cool.
It is, yeah. I honestly only learned about this when we were preparing for this webinar. So I'm going to dive in and play with it a bit more myself. But it is interesting because there's a whole interface around it, which is, well, timely in a way, and actually ties into the Bing news we have later on as well. But first, there was more stuff that SEOs worried about, because for a whole 2 weeks, our featured snippets were mostly gone. Well, ours weren't, actually, I think. I think ours were fine. But yeah, so featured snippets were gone for a whole lot of search results, and everyone was like, "Oh, well, Google changed everything, and we need to change our tactics, and everything has changed." No, it's not. And then they came back. It's so weird to see the reaction in the search world sometimes, in the SEO world, where people just go nuts over this sort of stuff. I understand why they do, but at the same time, don't worry as much as you do about things like this. If you don't have a featured snippet, chances are that you are still in that search result somewhere in the top 3. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be in that featured snippet, and you're probably still getting traffic just fine.
Yeah, I think gone are the days where we need to be microscopically analyzing our search results and our rankings and worrying if I'm 4th or I'm 5th, or is there a picture or isn't there a picture. Yes, when you're authoring and publishing your content, you should give it the best possible chance of looking great and ranking well, but you don't want to be spending time really obsessing about the individual search results for individual keywords. You want to be focusing on all the good things you should be doing with your site, because these results are different for everyone. They change all the time. Google run thousands of tests. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of algorithm updates every year, some huge, some tiny. It doesn't make sense to be really focusing on granularly these details. It's nice that people like Dr. Pete do the research at an aggregate scale, but this shouldn't be changing our focus on a day-to-day basis. We should be focusing on the same kind of strategic, make your site better stuff day in, day out.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of lessons here. One, don't change your strategy based on features like this, and two, make sure that you don't rely on one or two or three keywords, but make sure that you rely on a decent enough sized bucket so that your site is big enough to get traffic for multiple keywords, because you cannot build a business on a top ranking for one or two keywords. It's just, you're going to lose at some point. You're going to lose that ranking and you're going to be gone. So make sure that you have a lot of keywords that you're ranking for, and your SEO strategy should never be to rank for just one or two keywords.
Yeah, it's very easy to get caught in a trap where you say, oh, it's really important that we rank number one for this important short tail keyword that's our main focus. And yeah, but that should be as a result of all the good work and good rankings you have elsewhere. It should never be your singular focus.
Okay. This was our Google news for this week, so that's good. We're going to go straight on through to the Microsoft news, because they had one thing that we want to talk about. They talk about delivering more visually immersive experiences, and I hope that this will, this is actually a nice animated GIF. So as you can see, they made their image results look like Google.
Some other major search engine.
What is good to see here is the amount of Schema integration that they do, actually, because if you do this for recipes, then actually you get a lot of Schema that they show straight there in the search results.
Yeah, and they had things like reviews in some of the map results and all sorts of other bits. It looks like they are, yes, it looks very like Google, but they're also thinking a bit more about how do I
and the bit
search.
The bit that we were shown just now is new. So you can click on the image and then click on a part of the image and say, I want more of that. And that is new and actually innovative. I hope a lot of people will start using it, and Bing will suddenly start driving traffic to people. Would be cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was the Bing news, because they had nothing else that we really want to talk about. In other news, this was a poll from Alida, I think.
Yeah.
Do we agree with this? Has SEO become harder in the last 5 years?
Oh, this opens up the can of worms of the question of what is SEO, right? Is SEO just fixing your site and ranking for keywords, or is it building a brand that connects with your audience and all of the challenges, or is it somewhere in between, or is it just technical, or is it link building? I guess it's a bit of all of that. I think I'm still convinced that SEO hasn't really changed in the last decade. The objective is still author and manage web pages that solve the problems of your audience, and that hasn't really got harder. I think there are fewer ways to cheat and fewer shortcuts, but if you were using those, you weren't doing it right anyway. It wasn't really SEO, it was just link building or tactics. So I think SEO, no, it hasn't got harder. It is hard to do well, but conceptually it's easy. Just build the best pages on the website, on the internet, for your audience, for your products. So maybe.
Conceptually, it's very easy. In practice, it's a lot of hard work. But yeah. Okay. Do follow Alida on Twitter, though. She's great, and there's a lot of good news coming out of her. If you're interested in this sort of stuff, then you'll love following her too. On the WordPress news bit, we have a new version of WordPress 5.7. I think it was actually, for me, the 25th major WordPress release that I was one of the contributors on, so I was very happy to see it. But it had some nice new things, didn't it?
It did. Nothing groundbreaking or world-changing, but some good quality of life stuff. So it had an API for managing meta robots tags, which I'm not sure will interest anybody other than us. But in theory, it makes it much easier for plugins like Yoast SEO and themes and other systems to be a bit more sophisticated when it comes to understanding whether a page should be no-indexed, and whether Google should be allowed to source a large image or a small image, and if there's 12 different sets of rules, how should they be reconciled, which is definitely going to be more and more important as these tools and options become more fragmented. So that was nice. What else did we have? We had drag and drop blocks, didn't we? That's good.
Yeah, the drag and drop blocks is actually so. Honestly, when I add a block, what I do in the block editor is I type a slash and then I begin typing for the block that I want. But I realize that a whole lot of people might not actually do everything by their keyboard the way that I do, and they might open the block listing on the side, and now you can actually drag and drop blocks from that into your post, and it feels very natural when you look at it.
Yep, much more fluid. It's I know we've said this before recently, but it feels like the block editor is increasingly ironing out a lot of the initial user interface and experience challenges it had. It is so sleek now. It's such a pleasure to use, to just interact with the content as you author it and move things around. It is it's definitely getting there. It's good.
Yeah, it's absolutely cool.
Oh, sorry. You go.
No. It's absolutely cool. I can't stress this enough. If you haven't tried the block editor recently, please do.
Yep. And then the most exciting part of WordPress 5.7, like really, really thrilling, game-changing news, a new color palette. Yeah, that's good. So it's been a long-standing annoyance that in the WordPress admin area, there is a lot of old code and a lot of slow code. And a lot of that is down to the fact that there are a lot of different colors. I think at one point I looked through and there was something like 80 different shades of gray, just for like this line, this font, this background, etc., which has a performance overhead. Every single user loading those pages is loading 80 different types of gray. There's been a big overhaul and there is now a new color palette. The colors are really well thought out, really well chosen, really standardized. You might see the difference when you log in, just in different shades, but it's so much faster, so much better. It's a great branding and design decision, which will have kind of long-standing repercussions. So feels minor, but it's a great example of WordPress really nailing an area. So more on that later.
Cool. Yeah, no, it is great to see that. I honestly did not notice the change. And then we have some Yoast news because, of course, we have been releasing Yoast SEO. We had our Suite 16, our 16.0 release. The company is not 16 years old yet, but we did have a very nice release in which we did do something pretty major. We split our premium plugin into an add-on instead of being a replacement of the free plugin. So that it now installs as an add-on to the free plugin, which will make the update process a lot easier and in many ways more reliable. Why are we doing that? Well, because auto updates are becoming more and more of a thing, to the point where we're seeing that a lot of our users actually enable auto updates, and we love seeing that kind of trust from our users. And it just means that auto update processes become very reliable and good. So that is great and helps us a lot. And it actually paves the way for some future fun things we can do soon. And then, as I mentioned, I interviewed Rand Fishkin on the Yoast SEO podcast. So go find the Yoast SEO podcast on your favorite podcast system and listen to it. I also interviewed Kate Toon on SEO copywriting, which was an incredibly nice conversation as well. And tomorrow, the next podcast is coming out with Phil Nottingham about video SEO and video marketing. So there's a whole lot of content. If you want to go deeper and deeper and deeper, you can. Talking about going deeper, if you don't want to hear the dulcet tones of my voice, where you'd much prefer to hear Jono, then you can. And you should register now for our upcoming PageSpeed webinar, which is also free and is going to be loads of fun on April 8th. So that's a week and a half from now, right?
Thereabouts. I'm looking forward to this one. We always get a lot of questions in these about speed and optimization because Google are focusing on it a lot at the moment. We've obviously got the Core Web Vitals update coming in June, where Google are going to start really seriously treating people's site speed as a ranking factor. So I'm going to give you a big old bleh of everything that you need to know and be doing and thinking about with WordPress flavor, which should be pretty fun.
Cool.
Hopefully see everyone there.
And with that, we're going to open the floor to questions. And there he is. He pops up as by magic.
Perfect.
Yeah, that was my cue. So there's one little thing that I want to ask everyone's attention before going to questions. So if you haven't posted your question yet, this is the time to do so, and we'll get to them soon. But before that, there's this competition going on, and we talked about it last time. It is called the Plugin Madness. It's organized by Torque Magazine, an amazing WordPress resource. And basically, plugins are pitched against each other. And obviously, we want to rank first. So please go to pluginmadness.com, log in, vote for Yoast SEO. And if you have time in your hands, you can vote every day. It's that much fun. We only have a couple more rounds that we have to get through so that we can finally end up in the finals in a few weeks. So please do vote for Yoast SEO in the Plugin Madness. With that, I want to start with an easy question because it is almost April, which means that we have April Fools coming up. And I know you don't want to spoil everything, but is there maybe news that could be related to April Fools already out there?
Interesting. I haven't seen anything. I know, the PageSpeed webinar is definitely not an April Fool, so couldn't do that despite it being in April. I've not seen anything, and we are so busy with genuine new features and planning for things like new schema and things on the roadmap that I don't even know if we've thought about April Fools. That's a shame.
All right, so maybe next month we'll look back and go, okay, so everything we talked about last month.
Well, that is absolutely an option. We'll see. I don't know.
We'll see. All right.
I'm honestly not mentally prepared for April Fools yet. There's always some good stuff coming out, and Google usually has a good couple of really funny things. But it is also one of those days where after checking out the Google ones, you're usually better off just switching off the internet for the day.
All right, so let's get to our users' questions. And we talked about guided visits. So let's start with a question by Rome Guided Visits. Don't you think it should be better to invite users to click rather than give main info in the snippets?
Yeah, so this was about the featured snippet stuff that we were discussing. I think that as a brand, so if you're searching for meta description, the example I gave, and the result that people are looking for is 1 or 2 sentences. Why would we make them go through the extra hoop of clicking onto our site and then figuring out our site design and then reading it there and then going on with what they're doing when Google can give it straight to them right there?
We need to think about this as sorry.
Yeah, no, yeah. What I think mostly is that at that point, if Google can give it right there at that point, that is a great branding experience as well. If they remember that answer came from Yoast. What were you saying, Jono?
Just that we have to remember that what Google are trying to do is give Google's users a great experience and make money for Google. And nowhere in that is there any kind of hard written assumption that means sending people to other websites. And if they can solve that problem and help that user without making them have to visit a new website which they're not familiar with, which is slow to load and full of ads and confusing, then that's better for Google's users. So why would they? I think as soon as you start thinking about it that way, you have to realize that actually your objective can't be, it's better for me to get my users to click my site. It's not about you. It's not about your site. It's about Google and their users and what's best for them. And you have to adapt to fit whatever that model is. It's harder, but that's what Google want.
Check.
Right. Then we have a next question by Jonathan Roberts. On my WordPress site, I've got the blog categories indexed. Is this good for SEO or not?
Jonathan, the answer to this is, as always, with good SEO questions, it depends. But in general, I think that's usually a good idea to have your categories indexed, especially if you write a good intro to your category. So if your categories are more than just listings of posts, it would be good if they had a bit of a description about, hey, what type of posts are in here, and what type of content can you expect when you click on posts in this category. If you do, then I think it's usually a good idea to have them indexed. What I will say is that by default, WordPress ships with categories and tags. And what I often see people do is use both in exactly the same way. And at that point, it becomes really counterproductive. So if you have an SEO category and an SEO tag and they contain the same posts, then you have what is called a duplicate content problem, and you shouldn't do that. But if you have only one of those, then you're fine, and you should have them indexed.
It's also worth thinking about what should those category pages be for? What should they rank for? Quite often, it makes sense to use category pages as a place to target broad intent and things like plurals. Like if you've got lots of posts about pizza, your category page might be the best page on your site to rank for pizzas, whereas an individual post might make sense for an individual pieces. So yeah, you really can optimize them for those kinds of scenarios, but make sure you've not got 1,000 categories, each of which only has 1 or 2 posts in. Less is more, and make those pages really good pages. It doesn't matter that they're category pages, they just need to be good pages.
Yeah, one of the things we've been trying to do for quite a while now is get a proper editor on the category pages, because right now in default WordPress you can only edit the text for a category or a tag as basically as plain text, and you can add some HTML by hand if you want. We turned that into a rich editor already, but it's still not what I'd really like it to be. I'd like to have the block editor on there.
And I think also related, I just highlighted a comment by Naeem. I like the internal link suggestions, which is quite helpful for SEO. And this is not a WordPress feature, but this is a Yoast SEO premium feature.
Yeah. So I saw that Rome Guided Visit asked about that as well. Like, what does Yoast SEO Premium do? Well, one of the things that we do in Yoast SEO Premium is give you internal linking suggestions. One of the best things you can do right now to optimize your site. So if you're going to walk away from this webinar thinking, hey, I really need to work on my site, and what should I start doing? Well, the best thing you can usually start doing is making sure that your internal linking is good, so that you're linking from your most important pages from the other pages, you thought about this. And if you don't know how to think about that, we have a course for that in Yoast Academy, because we do these things. We try to explain everything that we do. So by all means, go look at that. Of course, if you buy Yoast SEO Premium, you get both access to all the courses and the internal linking feature, so you can play with both. I saw another one that
I had another question by Matteo Herbin, and it's quite a long question, but basically I think what he's asking is, does the information on your website change for the country you are targeting?
Yes.
Or should it?
It should also. And some of that is legal stuff and other stuff, but in many ways, it also needs to adapt in terms of language and context. So Yoast as a company is originally Dutch, and Dutch is a very small language area, but we still have 2 groups of people speaking languages that are very close to each other, Dutch and Flemish, and which is spoken in the northern part of Belgium. And they use different words, and you could say, hey, I build one site in Dutch and that's good for both of them, and that never works, because their context is different. The way that they think about the words they use to describe what's good and what's not are different. A lot of this is very cultural. And so, yeah, I do think that you need to adapt to what you're selling to a lot more.
All right. So I think I'll do a final call for questions. So if you did not get your question in just yet, then now would be the right time to make sure that you post it to either our Facebook or our YouTube comments.
Can you highlight Val's comment, Taco? Because
Yes,
I actually think that two things I want to say there. One
it's
is
not the greetings one. Huh?
No, it's the other one. Yeah. One thing I want to say is, hi, Val. Good to see you. Val is a trusted friend from the WordPress community who now works at this wonderful company called Cloudflare that we didn't even promote this week, which is, I think a first in many ways, because usually we do promote Cloudflare on this webinar. But if Val said this is for claimed locations in relation to the review stuff, which is very true. To be honest, if you're listening to this webinar and you have not claimed your location on Google My Business yet, if you have one, go do that now.
I'll wait a sec. Yeah.
I mean, it's honestly the most important thing you need to do. And it is astonishing to me how often I still see unclaimed locations on Google Maps. It really baffles me, because you want to be in control of that, and stores that are not in control of that is just weird.
Yeah, that is increasingly your homepage before people get to your homepage, if they ever do.
And the Eugenio's question is actually very one that I think Jono can answer well, but I can tackle it too. But I'll let Jono go first.
Sure. Okay, great question. So will your site slow down if you use too many Yoast SEO plugins or add-ons? There are two parts to this answer. One is WordPress doesn't do a lot of SEO out the box. It's reasonably friendly, but there's a big gap. Yoast SEO does a lot of things. It does 1,000 things behind the scenes that you will never see, that you never need to see or even know about to improve your SEO. Every single one of those takes a millisecond. So it does take an amount of time to do things. There is no way around that. However, Yoast SEO is built in such a way that it actually makes a lot of sites faster than they would be just on WordPress as is. We store all of your SEO data in a very clever structure so that we can request it and process it and do all those 1,000 tasks much faster than WordPress would naturally process things like metadata and queries. So all plugins might slow your site down a little bit if they are doing stuff. That's just because electricity takes time to run through the hardware, etc. But we speed things up, and you don't need to worry about speed with Yoast SEO ever. Hope that helps.
I agree with that, and well, what Jono says is true. A plugin also always adds a bit of time because it has to do something. Otherwise, you wouldn't have the plugin. But I think we preempt that quite well, and we should. And normally, your site should not be slower. If your site does become slower after installing Yoast SEO, then by all means, do contact us. What's the best way to move an old site to a new domain? This is my favorite thing to do on the planet.
So they should hire you.
No. But an old site to a new domain is relatively simple these days. What you do is you set a 301 redirect for every URL on your old site to the equivalent on your new site, and then you go into Google Search Console and you say that you've moved the site, and that is it. And then you wait for 6 months, and yes, months, for Google to update all of that, and then you should be good. But it will take a bit of time.
And what does it look like in those 6 months?
The old domain will keep on ranking, and because you have the 301 redirect in place, so that they will click on that, and when they will go to the new site, and there's not really that much of a problem. But the old site will still be in there. It takes ages. And the most important thing to do is to redirect everything, because leaving parts of the old site on the old site and moving parts to the new site is what often causes these things to fail.
Yeah.
All right.
And can
Jono,
we answer the hosting one? Because James Scott.
yes.
I just want to highlight
Yeah.
our WordPress hosting page. We have a perfect WordPress hosting page, yoast.com/WordPress-hosting. We don't get paid for any of the hosts listed there. We're friends with a whole lot of them, but that's something completely different. And we actually test them. I think Taco actually tests a whole lot of these.
Almost all of them, yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we're currently in the process of updating all the information on the page. So by the end of next week, everything should be completely up to date again. Because sometimes hosts update their supported PHP versions, fortunately.
Yeah, which is definitely a good thing. So yoast.com/WordPress-hosting.
Yes. All right. So, Jono, in your area of expertise, there's an AMP question.
Interesting. I keep getting warnings that AMP is slowing down my site. That surprises me. I wonder, is it implemented properly? I would double check that it validates and that you pass the AMP validation tools, which you can find on amp.dev, I think. I would also run Google's Lighthouse tests, which I will be talking about a lot in our next webinar on how to monitor, measure, manage, optimize your speed. It can be, there are definitely scenarios where your site might be slower with AMP than it could be without. In fact, I recently built my site using the WordPress AMP plugin, and I know that it could be slightly faster if I wasn't using the AMP plugin and I did some clever trickery, but it's already so fast that it wouldn't make any difference. I think if you're talking about an average site and it's slowing down, something has probably gone wrong, or the tools you're using to assess the speed are maybe misreporting or misunderstanding how the JavaScript works or something else. So ping us a link. I'll take a look. Tweet us. I'm intrigued. We'll go and try and debug that. Why not?
All right. With that, I think we've reached the end of today's webinar. So do register for the PageSpeed webinar coming up on April 8th, which is in a week and a half, as Joost said earlier. And we'll be happy to see you there again. We'll also do another regular SEO news webinar next month. So we hope to see you again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone. And bye-bye.
Bye-bye.